This art feather caught my eye and I thought it would be a good vinyl cutting project. I'm going to digitize this full-size diagram. Here I'm using Logic Trace 2018 and I'm going to select tracing with polylines. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trace out the whole feather, just the outline, because that's going to be the file that I'll be using to cut on the CO2 laser. I'll be cutting an 1/8 inch birch panel. Once I have the outline trace, I'll save that as a separate file just for the CO2 cutter. This file will be directly loaded right into the laser software. Now I'm going to start tracing and digitizing all the internal parts of the feather. All these internal parts I'll be putting into the vinyl cutter, and I'll be using blue vinyl and white vinyl. As I've said before, I always get my diagrams printed full size or even bigger. The bigger the diagram, the easier it is for me to trace and digitize, especially on small, intricate parts. Once I'm finished, I'll take all these parts and I'll nest them, and then I'll get the best cut because the vinyl is 24 inches wide. When I'm tracing these parts, I keep a monitor close by so I don't trace these parts more than once. The monitor shows if you trace something twice, and all you do is go into the software, edit that portion out, and just delete it. When I work at something this detailed, I save my work frequently. I usually create a bunch of files. In the end, I'll just make one file. We're getting close here to finishing up the feather, and once I'm done all the files, I'll create one final file, and I'll load that file into Vectric Aspire 10.5, check the quality of the vectors, and we'll do some nesting. Also, in Aspire, I'll separate that feather outline for the laser cut. Shown here, I'm starting to pull a lot of those small parts outside of the feather outline. And when I collect all those parts, that's how I'll do the nesting. One thing I forgot to mention here, this feather has two sides. So when we work on this side, we also have to work on the back side. So I'll be creating nesting for the front and back. Here I'm loading the DXF file for the feather outline into the laser software, and you can see there the laser is going to cut that feather outline out of 1/8 inch birch plywood. Doesn't take much power to cut through that 1/8 inch birch plywood. Now I'm going to load the DXF files for the vinyl cut. Shown here is all the blue parts that I'm cutting out. Part of the setup of the vinyl cutter is before you start your cut, you cut that small white triangle, and that's a test cut to make sure that the vinyl will remove from the backing perfectly. Here I'm doing the cut with the white vinyl. Once the parts are cut and it's weeded, we start thinking about the pre-mask. You can see here all the white parts, and a piece of pre-mask is applied. I'm just showing the finished feather compared to the diagram. It's right on. I like the look of the feather. The colors are very nice, and the symbols are smart.